Okay, good evening, everybody. Sorry about the delay. We've had some technical difficulties. Let's get into it. Okay, a few things. First of all, tonight is the sixth day of Teves. Today was the fifth day of Teves, the month of Hebrew month of Teves. It's a very special day on the Chabad Hasidic calendar. The fifth day of Teves celebrates in the 1980s, the ownership of the Chabad library was challenged. There were those who were saying that the library was the personal property of the previous Rebbe and therefore should be divided amongst his heirs, versus the Chabad position was that the library belongs to the Chabad World Organization, and it ended up going to federal court. And on the fifth day of Teves in 1987, the court decided that the library belongs to the Chabad Hasidic movement, and really, what this, besides being about books, it was really about is the Rebbe the continuation of the previous Rebbe's leadership, or is this a new movement that emerged? And meaning, in other words, did the Chabad movement end when the previous Rebbe passed away? Which, of course, it was a ridiculous claim, but nonetheless, even ridiculous claims get their day in court, and the Rebbe viewed it as a challenge to his leadership and to his connection with the Hasidic movement and his connection to the previous Rebbe, and this was all vindicated, not just by other Jews, but by a non-Jew who was the federal judge who decided the case. And for Hasidim, the way we celebrate this, besides dancing and farmringans and all wonderful things, we also use it because this came about through the books. We use it as an opportunity to buy books, and it's also an opportunity. Many bookstores and the Judaica stores have sales on books, so it's always an opportunity to broaden your library, which, if you can see behind me, is something that we do over here. So I just purchased a book. So it's a wonderful opportunity to buy a book, start your Jewish library, expand your Jewish library, and you're also connecting to this very, very special day, which a federal judge decided that explained what the life of a Rebbe is, what the Hasidic movement is really about, which is it's not just about an individual, but it's about a movement, how every Jew is connected to the leader of the Jewish people, and that continues even after his passing. Okay, of course, tonight's class, this is the first class we're having since Hanukkah, and tonight's class is dedicated in the memory of all those who passed away in the terrible tragedy in Australia, and it's also in the merit that all those who need healing, that were injured in that terrible attack, should find healing, and the families of those who passed away and those who were injured should find healing, and we only should know good things. If you'd like to sponsor this class, sponsorships are available. As an aside, I want to thank everybody who participated in the fundraising drive that happened today at fuel.chabadluth.org. Thank God we raised 91% of our goal, over $22,000. Really, really an amazing accomplishment for everybody who participated. Thank you so much. It's going to allow us to continue to serve the community and grow our activities in the coming calendar year. Okay, let's get into it. This week's Torah portion is Parsha of Vayigash, so we're going to talk a little bit about Joseph and his brothers. Of course, we know that Joseph was sold by his brothers. The question is why? How did that happen? And what has it got to do with us? So let's start with the story. The story goes that Joseph was annoying his brothers. His brothers saw him coming and decided they're going to kill him. Reuven, the oldest brother, sees him and sees what they're going to do, and he says, I got to save them because I'm responsible. I'm the oldest brother. Who's going to be blamed for his death if not for me? So Reuven goes, and he says, I have a better idea. Let's not kill our brother. Let's throw him into a pit. Now, Reuven's idea was, let me throw him into a pit. Let's calm the situation down. I'll come and I'll rescue him later. However, the Torah tells us in Genesis chapter 37 that in fact he did not show up. What ends up happening is the brothers sit down to a meal, and they see a traveling caravan pass by, and they say, "Let's sell our brother." Yehuda has another idea. He said, "I am going to save our brother. Why should he be killed? Let him be sold as a slave." So they sell him as a slave, and Reuven comes back, and he sees what's going on. He sees Joseph isn't there, and he is, he takes responsibility. He says, "This is my fault. I'm going to be blamed." So the question is, where was Reuven? Where was he? So the Torah tells us that in fact he had done a sin. What happened was after the passing of Rachel, Joseph's mother, Jacob takes his bed, which was always in Rachel's tent, and he moves it to the tent of her maidservant, which was his fourth wife, or his third wife, and he moves it to her tent, I guess in memory of his wife, Rachel. Reuven wants to defend his mother's honor. He said, "My mother always suffered the fact that she was not the main wife, that she was secondary to Rachel. Now she's going to be secondary to Rachel's maidservant. That can't be." And he moved Yaakov's bed into his mother's tent, and for this he was punished. For this, he was considered to have committed adultery, which of course he had not. But the Torah says that the fact that he had played around with Jacob's arrangements, this was a terrible sin. So Reuven, where was he? He was repenting. He was doing teshuvah. He was sitting and fasting and praying. But meanwhile, Joseph was being sold. And we see two things that came out of this. Number one, this is the direct result of a terrible tragedy that happens many years later. There was the Roman Caesar Luliano. When he read this portion of the Torah, he said that what happened to the brothers, and how could they survive? Doesn't the Torah tell us? And by the way, we read all about this on Yom Kippur, in the Eila Eskra part of the Musaf service on Yom Kippur. The Torah the Machzor tells us about the story and how he said, "What do you mean? Doesn't the Torah tell us that someone who kidnaps another person is liable to death penalty?" And he says, "I am going to kill 10 Jewish sages, some of the greatest sages of all time," and he murdered them as retribution for this. And the Machzor recounts the story how this was a decree from heaven, how these people were truly worthy of replacing those 10 brothers. That's how great they were, and therefore the retribution came on them. And it was a great tragedy for the Jewish people. And the second tragedy that ends up happening that comes from this is that the exile of Egypt is the direct result of Joseph going down to Egypt, and eventually Jacob going down to Egypt, because Jacob goes because Joseph is there. And all exiles stem from this original exile. So we see a direct connection between the situation that we are in today, that we are in exile away from the land of Israel, is a direct connection between now and the sin of Reuven, of not being there to save Joseph. And in fact, because the exile of Egypt was never really completed, we never really finished our job, and therefore the Jewish people had to go back to exile twice, and we are in that third exile. Now, the first lesson we could see from this is, where was Reuven? He was fasting. He was doing something on his own, something for his own good, but it came at the expense of his brother. And that is the lesson to us, is that when a Jewish child needs something, we can't be busy in our own world. Yes, he was doing something very important. He was repenting for something that he had done, but that was not what he had to do at that time. And the truth is that at that time, the Jewish people were not yet a nation, and the idea of every Jew being responsible for each other was not yet fully formed. But for us, every single Jew has responsibility for another Jew, and therefore, it is our job to be responsible for every single person. And the Medrash tells us a story. There was once a man, a parable. There was once a man who was sitting in a boat with many other people, and he took an axe and he started chopping a hole in the boat. And everyone started yelling at him. Everyone started saying, "How can you chop a hole in your boat in the boat?" He said, "Don't worry, I'm just chopping a hole in my section of the boat. Don't worry about it. Don't mind your own business. And of course, that is the furthest thing from the truth. That when a person is chopping a hole in the boat, it affects everybody. And the same thing is when it comes to the Jewish people. Let's continue with this idea. Let's build on this. The next thing we see is in Genesis chapter 45. Joseph confronts, we finish the story in this week's Torah portion, and Joseph is confronting his brothers and telling them, I am Joseph, and they're like, oh, we got it coming to us. This is not going to work out well. And he says, don't worry. I'll read inside Genesis chapter 45. But now do not be sad, and let it not trouble you, that you sold me here, for it was to sustain life that God sent me before you. For already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me here before you to make for you a remnant in the land, to preserve it for you for great deliverance. So Joseph says, actually, the fact that you sold me, God sent me here, not you. So don't worry, I don't blame you at all. God sent me here. Now, and not only that, God sent me here. God sent me here to provide for you. And what we see from this is that every single Jew has a mission. Everybody has a mission, and our mission, as we just explained, is to help another person. Is to help another person enhance their Judaism, and to help them sometimes simply, physically, but also to help them ready the world to finish the exile of Egypt. And when it comes to this idea, we see a few other things that apply in this week's Torah portion. That we see symbolized, I should say, in this week's Torah portion. The first thing is that when Joseph and Yaakov and Yosef are reunited, Yaakov sends wagons, and Joseph remembers. That's what the Torah tells us. What does it mean that he remembered? And Yaakov's spirit is revived. What is the connection? So the Torah tells us that the commentators tell us that the last thing that Jacob had learned with Joseph, that Yaakov had learned with Yosef, was the laws of an eglah rufa. Eglah rufa is a law that is described in the Torah that when a person is found dead near a city, outside the city, and nobody knows what happened to this person, the Torah tells us that the entire city is responsible. And therefore, the Torah tells us the remedy is you take a calf and you kill the calf next to a river, and the rabbis and the Sanhedrin and the court of that city say that we are not responsible for the death of this person. And that is the law. And this is the last thing Yaakov had learned with Yosef, and therefore Yaakov sent Yosef agalot, which literally translates into wagons, but it can also mean a calf, which is again the law of eglah rufa. So he was hinting to Joseph, do you remember the last thing that we lived? And Joseph did remember. And we see here that this is something that, how we see that when somebody learns Torah, they have to learn Torah in a way that they have to learn Torah in a way that they become one with it. They remember it 22 years later. They still remember the Torah that they learned. And that's how we're able to, and that is how Joseph survived in Egypt, in a place where he was sent all by himself, because when he learned Torah, when he studied Torah with his father, it carried him for 22 years of exile, all alone. The only Jew in an entire foreign land. Now, this is how we get through exile, and this is how we're going to see in a second. This is also how we're going to educate the next generation. So let's continue with that idea. It says that Jacob comes to Egypt in this week's Torah portion, and 70 people come to. It says that there are 70 people who show up in this week's Torah portion. 70 people who show up from Jacob's family to Egypt. There are actually only 60. There are 66, and then there are Joseph and his 2 sons, and the last one is Yocheved. Yocheved is obviously later going to be the mother of Moses, the mother of Moshe Rabbeinu, and a very important person in Jewish history. And she is born it says between the walls of Egypt. She's literally born at the border, and therefore she is counted as the 70th soul that comes to Egypt. And this is something that we see that sometimes we have what is called imposter syndrome. That we feel like we're not worthy. We feel like, who am I? Who am I to be the Reuven who's going to save another person? Who am I to be who am I to be somebody who could study Torah in a way that that it's going to sustain me and sustain the next generation? That to the point where not only is Joseph counted as one of the 70 souls of Jacob's family, his two sons, they're also Jewish because of the way that Joseph educated them. Who am I? And the answer is even a little baby, someone who is born literally seconds before they come into the land of Egypt. Even that person is one of the 70 souls that builds the Jewish people, and one of the very important ones. And the truth is that every single place that we are put in life, we are given a mission. We're not here, as Joseph understood. We're not here because of happenstance. We're not here because someone else did it to me. Joseph, not for 1 second. And in the next week's Torah portion, after Jacob passes away, Joseph reassures his brothers, I have no ill will against you. And he takes it even further in next week's Torah portion, saying that that basically that they had done a good thing, but we'll leave that for another day. That we all could, the truth is that we all have that ability. God gave every single one of us the ability to overcome whatever challenges that are around us, because he put us here for a reason. The question is, why? What am I here? Am I here for myself? I could be like Reuven, who was busy doing his own thing, living in a hut, like a hermit. I'm sorry, all by himself. Or you could be saving somebody else. God put you here to educate someone else. God gave you the ability to study Torah in a way that sustains you and that can sustain the next person. That is what the message of this week's Torah portion is. Where are you? It's because God put you there. And that is something that Joseph recognized, and that we see that even somebody who was a baby, but they had they had the potential and the ability, and they said, obviously Yocheved succeeds in nurturing the savior of the Jewish people, Moses. So, and this Torah portion also always comes after Hanukkah, and Hanukkah is all about Jewish education, because the word Hanukkah comes from the word chinuch, which is education, which is one of the reasons we give Hanukkah gelt on Hanukkah. We give money to children to teach them how to use money. We teach them to use it for good things, to give charity to some of it, to not squander it, etc. And we have to educate children from the youngest ages that they are put here on this world for a purpose. And as adults, we have to educate ourselves that we are put here for a purpose. Wherever we are, there's a reason for it, and it is our job to figure out what can I be doing for someone else. Not to retreat, not to go and be somebody who only lives for themselves, but how can I help somebody else? How can I educate the next generation of the Jewish people? Thank you very much for joining. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and God willing, we will see you next week.